I'm Ness, and this is Heather the turkey, and this is my video as part of the Casting Rainbows event through Scraggy, which is raising money for the Rainbows Hospice for children and young people, so please give generously. This is a tour of my wildlife garden and my permaculture veggie plots, and I'll be giving hints and tips on how to make your garden more wildlife friendly. Okay, and here it is. This is my garden. It's quite a long thin garden, so the first part is the wildlife garden, then there's my birds, and then at the bottom are my veggie plots. Okay, we'll start off with the herb bed, or should I say the mint bed, because I learnt the hard way that mint takes over, so it's best to put it in pots. But we've got lots of really nice mint, so this is my spearmint. And then I think that one's the peppermint, and then we've got some apple mint, and this one's my favourite, this is chocolate mint. We've also got some oregano and some sage. They're all really good for pollinators, and when I say pollinators I mean insects that carry pollen from one flower to another, so that includes bees, hoverflies, butterflies, and various other insects. One of the great things about this herb bed is that it seems to attract a lot of these little critters. Now these are actually ladybird larvae, so this is what ladybirds look like when they first hatch, and they're like this for about 2 weeks, and then they pupate, so they kind of hibernate a bit like a caterpillar that goes into a chrysalis, and then after a couple of weeks they come out as a ladybird, so red with black spots. We've also got some cuckoo spit here, and that's caused by an insect I think called froghopper nymph, I think is correct, and they actually live inside the froth. Okay, and this is our plum tree. This is one of our more mature trees, and a tree like this is really good for a bird feeder, although they've eaten all of ours, so I'll have to replace those. But that's really good to put up, really good to attract birds. And then onto the patio. So as you can see, I'm not a huge fan of any wasted space when I can put some plants on it. So I bought some of these bags from an online garden centre, and you just fill them full of topsoil and compost, and you can just plant them up. So I've got some herbs on there, and I've got potatoes all along here, and these are actually really good for potatoes because you have to keep filling potatoes up with soil. So you just roll the bags down, and then as you fill them up you just roll the bags back up, and you get lots of potatoes. And I've got some more over here. So this is a really good option if you've got like a big patio and just a lawn or a small garden, just to get some of these bags and just fill them up. So I've got some beetroot and some radishes in there, some salads in there, and these are chilies and peppers. Well, this is also a good thing to do if you have a patio, if you want to, obviously, is that you can take up some of the patio slabs, dig down until you get to the soil, and then just fill it up with soil and compost. This is actually a tea bush, so we're hoping that one day we'll be able to make our own tea. And that's a currant bush. We also let flowers grow wild on the patio in the cracks, so these are aquiledias, and they just self-seed really easily, and they come out with these really pretty flowers, and the bees love them, so we're happy to have them on here. Now this is my insect hotel. This is a really good thing to put in your garden to attract insects, and they're really easy to make. This one is just pallets with bricks in between them, and it is a work in progress. I haven't finished it yet. So far all I've done is bamboo tubes, and so that's for solitary bees, and then I've put in some corrugated cardboard, which is apparently good for lace wings, so I'll have to look out for those. And then on top, again, I'm not wasting any space when I can put plants on it. So I've got some strawberries, and we've got some, I think they're chilies, are they peppers? I think chili and a pepper. And that's some bird going crazy over there. And then we'll move on to one of my bee and butterfly beds. So this is one of the first beds that I put together, and the plants that I've put in are catmint there, we've got a rosemary there, and a perovskia there, some more catmint, I've got some lavender, that's really popular with the bees, and this is called butterfly bush. So we've got some of those in, and they have these really beautiful kind of pinky purple flowers, which are very popular with butterflies. Ooh, got some bees down there. And this here is my bird bath. It's a really good idea to have a bird bath, because not only does it allow birds to bathe in it, it also allows them to drink, and this one's quite good because it's got the sloped edge. It means that insects kind of crawl down and they can take a drink as well, so that's good. Now this is my rockery. Now believe it or not, there is actually a rockery under there, and these flowers took over a few years ago, and it's a plant called green alkanet, which has these beautiful blue flowers, and it's very popular to bees. We get a lot of bees on this plant. Now it is technically considered a weed, although I'm not a huge fan of that word. I prefer to just call them wildflowers. I mean, I think weed is quite a negative word, and they're actually quite helpful plants, and they're actually quite important to wildlife. So I just call them wildflowers. It just means they're flowers that grow quite wildly, and they're quite good at reproducing. And we also have this, which appeared this year, and it's called garlic mustard. And we actually realised this year for the first time we were getting orange tip butterflies in the garden, and this is their favourite food, so I think that's why. And I noticed that we have a caterpillar, which I think is from the orange tip butterfly, so that's quite exciting. Hopefully we'll get more of those in the garden. Now also in this rockery, believe it or not, we have a pond, and we actually made it out of a plastic dog bed, which we covered with plastic sheeting, and then we just filled it up with rainwater and a few plants and some rocks. It's really easy to make a pond, and a pond is amazing for a garden. It attracts all sorts of animals like newts and frogs and toads, and also things like pond skaters and dragonflies. We do actually have a frog. Let's see if we can find it. But you know, if you do some research online, find information on how to make a pond. So let's just go over here. Interesting. Another bee. Okay, let's see if we can get down to the pond. Can't see if the frog's there. Oh, there's a frog, I just saw it. Just hopped out the way. That's our pond down there. And it has a lot of plants growing in it. But hopefully once this alkanet dies back, we'll be able to see it better, and we'll be able to see the frog better as well. Okay, and then on to the lawn. So this is our lawn, and as you can see, we're not a huge fan of mowing. I don't think this has been mowed since October. This is the second year that we've not mowed over spring and summer, and as a result we've had loads of plants pop up. So as you can see, we've had a lot of dandelions, which I know aren't very popular to a lot of people, but they're actually a really good source of early spring food for bees. And if you don't want them to spread, as soon as they're finished flowering, you just take the head off and they don't seed. But we've had a whole lawn of them this year, and they've been really popular. We've also had some buttercups, they're quite new. And we've had some docks, which is a new one, and they look like they're getting ready to flower, so that'll be interesting. Also got some clover down here, so we should get some clover flowers. And what else have we had? We've had ragwort, which is this one. We've had this for a couple of years, and this is actually a really popular one with the cinnabar moth, which is a black and red moth, and this is the plant that they lay their eggs on. So, and I think, there we go, some eggs there, which will hopefully hatch, and they'll be covered with caterpillars, which are black and yellow striped caterpillars, and they'll just eat the entire thing until there's nothing left but a stem. And we've had some meadow grass over there, and we planted some plants in the lawn. Where are they? And so that these things, we planted some of these, which are teasels, which are kind of dried honeycomb thistles in a way, and they're really good for pollinators and birds. So we've planted some of those in the lawn. They will survive in the lawn. Another thing you can do in your lawn is to plant some bulbs. So we did have some crocus bulbs which came up over spring, and that's a really easy thing to do, you know, if you don't want to have all these appear in your lawn. Okay, and this is our buddleia plant, and this will grow big and tall and have big plumes of pink purple flowers on them, which are very popular to butterflies. And then got all sorts across here. This is a lilac tree, and this is a cherry tree. Fruiting trees like this are very popular to pollinators because they flower in spring, so it's a good bit of food for them. This is our rhubarb, and it seems to be very popular for these shield beetles, and they seem to love this plant. Shield beetles aren't very popular to gardeners, but really they don't really cause any problems. I've never had any problems with them, so I just let them be. We've got some geraniums down there. This is our apple tree. Gonna have to thin these out soon. This is our contorted hazel. We've got some raspberries down here. So obviously flowers loved by bees. And then this is a load of shrubs that were here when we moved in, which I'm sure probably has a lot of things living in it, so we just leave it alone. We don't really try to do anything with it. And on the other side we have the bee flower beds. Now, I bought these plants from a company that specialises in bee plants called Rosie Bee, and it is best to get plants from places like that if you do want to attract things like bees, because a lot of people think that if it has flowers on it, it'll attract bees, but it's not technically correct. There are a lot of flowers that bees aren't interested in or they can't access, and if you go to a specialist, they will give you plants that bees will definitely love, and the bees have definitely loved these. And also they're grown without pesticides, and this is the cinnabar moth, which has been laying eggs on my ragwort, so they're very pretty. Okay, and on to the meadow. Now, a meadow is a really good thing to have if you want to attract wildlife. It's absolutely essential to pollinators, and I have all sorts visiting this meadow. Oh, there's a bee. And I see a lot of caterpillars, I see a lot of hoverflies, I see dragonflies, I see all sorts. And they can be kind of easy to put together. One thing you can do is, if you have some cleared ground, you can just throw down some wildflower seeds and see what grows. What we've done here is we actually bought meadowflower turf. So it's turf that had everything seeded into it, and every year it's looked a bit different. This year it seems to be mostly campion, which are these, and we do have some Raggedy Robins over here. We've got plenty of stuff coming up which will flower in due time. The grasses seem to have taken over here. But yeah, it always comes back, and it's always beautiful. But yeah, meadows are a really good thing to have in the garden, and they can be quite easy to do. We've also put some fruit trees in here. So this is our cherry tree, and this is a peach tree. This one is a cider apple tree, so hopefully we'll be able to make our own cider. And this one's a hazelnut tree, which we do actually get hazelnuts from. Oh, there's a little bee. They are very fond of the meadow. This is an extension of the bee bed, and it has flowered, and as you can see it's getting very popular. So this is taller catmint, and these are, I think, Nautia, and we've got some malva down here, and when that flowers it's these beautiful pink flowers that honeybees go absolutely crazy for, and they get inside the flowers and they get absolutely covered in pollen. It's like dust. Now I might as well introduce you to our chickens. So these are our rescue chickens. Let me just open the door. This is Heidi. That one is Legs, because it's got really long legs. The brown one is Hazel. That one's Moira, and the one that's sitting in the shade under there, that's our old lady. That is, oh, you know, I've completely forgotten her name. It's the woman from Frozen. Okay. And down here we've got my turkey. This is Heather. Hello, Heather. And there's our ducks, Indian runner ducks. They're very skittish, they don't like us very much. They just run away as soon as we come near them. But Heather is very sweet. She's very nice. And you? Sure, you're a good girl. Elsa. Her name is Elsa. Oh, I also forgot to say that another thing that we allow to grow is some nettles, which again, not popular to a lot of people, but they are very good for butterflies. So the red admiral and the peacock butterfly, they both lay eggs on the nettles. So if you can have a patch that's, you know, away from the path where they can't sting you, it's worth doing. So we've got ours at the back there, and any that trail and try to crawl and grow in other areas, we just pull them up. So yeah, I have been stung, but you know, not that many times. Okay, and now these are the veggie pots. So as you can see, there are a few areas I still need to plant up. Here I'm planning to put some sweet corn and some beans and some melons, which will hopefully grow, we'll see. Here I have some broad beans, which look how cute they are. Oh, I love my broad beans. So they're really cool, and hopefully they'll get nice and tall. Here we're attempting to grow sweet potatoes. Whether or not they'll grow, we'll see, but it'd be really nice to have some sweet potatoes. Now these, that you can see there are many of, are garlic plants, and I accidentally made a overorder of garlic plants and ended up with about 150 of them. And I created these veggie beds, which are called keyhole beds. As you can see, the path is the shape of a keyhole, and then it has circular beds that radiate from it. And I spent a while trying to decide what to use to show the borders of the beds. And then I thought, hey, got all these garlic plants, I'll just use those. So luckily I like garlic, because I could very well end up with over 100 of them. So that's those. These are actually asparagus. The little spears, this is what they look like when they grow. So I did get some spears, but because the crowns are only 2 years old, they were quite weedy. So I thought, I'll let them grow, see what happens. So that's quite interesting. These are my salads, which I've planted with onions. I've heard that onions are a really good companion for salads. I think they keep away certain pests, they deter certain pests that go for salads. So I planted them with them. These are parsnips. These are purple sprouting with broccoli. There. And then around here I got my peas. They're quite interesting. I got my water butt. It's a really good idea to try and save as much water as possible over the winter, and then you can use it for watering your plants over spring and summer. These are artichokes. I've got 3 there, and actually I think that is a ladybird pupa. So hopefully we will get a ladybird hatching from that soon. Yay. And this is my mulberry tree. So as you can see, it did sustain a bit of damage when we had some frost earlier in the month, but it seems to be growing back really nicely now. Along the back here we've got some sweet peas, and hopefully they'll climb up this trellis here. Oh, these are really interesting. These are sunflowers. These are giant sunflowers. So these should grow to about 2 meters tall, and they're super easy to grow, really good to grow with kids. Just put the seed in a tray, have them inside until they're, a couple of inches tall, and then plant them out. And they grow really well, and obviously you've got the beautiful big flower heads that are really popular with bees. So also, as you can see, it's a bit of a light touch on weeding. I kind of just let things grow. If anything starts taking over, or I pull it out, but other than that, I'm happy to just have things grow. It saves me a lot of work. Now here we've got my cabbages, and this is my carrots and my onions, which are a good combination to grow together. They're my broccolis, and these are my cauliflowers. Okay, now all these vegetables have been grown using kind of permaculture principles, which means that you kind of grow vegetables in harmony with nature. You don't impact on ecosystems, so I don't use pesticides. It's poisonous for a lot of animals, including bees and things that you do actually want in your veggie plots. And also if I've got some aphids on my broccolis, and if I use something to get rid of those aphids, then that's taking food away from ladybirds. So I'm hoping that soon I'll have ladybirds and wasps and other helpful insects flocking down here to help me out and control the numbers of aphids and green fly and other things that can damage plants. But we'll see. So So we also have, this is one of my favourites, this is a Manuka tree. So as you can see, it's got these beautiful white flowers down here, and you might recognise the name in regards to Manuka honey, and this is actually the New Zealand tree that honeybees feed on to make Manuka honey. And it's also a really beautiful tree, and fully grown this will be about 3 meters high and 3 meters wide, so it'll be a huge bush. Okay, here I've got a gooseberry bush, so hopefully we'll get some gooseberries. I'll attempt to make some jam. Okay, and we've got the greenhouse here. It's a bit broken down, but yeah, it does the job. And in here we've got tomatoes, and I'm growing some basil with them as well, which apparently is a really good combination for tomatoes. And these are actually avocado trees, which I grew from stones. They weren't too happy in the house, so I brought them out here, and they seem to be doing a lot better. So maybe one day I might have something that resembles an avocado. This is a nut that I found that had germinated, so I just put it in some compost and we'll see what grows. I've got some broccoli and some tomatoes here, which I really need to pot up. I'll do that tomorrow. And then at the bottom of the garden we've got the compost area. So these 2 bins is where I put all the chicken poop and the turkey poop and the duck poop, and it makes really nice fertiliser. So I just put it in there. I've also found that it's turned into a bit of a wormery. So wormery is a kind of compost where you encourage worms, and the worms will reproduce and you'll have hundreds of worms, and worms are obviously very good for the garden, so anything to encourage worms. So I'm kind of just leaving them to it in there. I've got another couple of compost bins over here. The compost bin to the left, it has actually just turned into a huge ant's nest, absolutely full of ants, but they are doing a really good job of breaking down all the plants and making some really nice compost. We also had a big pile of soil just piled up down here, so we put all the soil and bits of compost in these 2 bags, and in here we're growing some courgettes, and in here we're growing pumpkins, and then I'll put a currant bush down there. I'll probably put another couple of bushes down there as well. And this is the end of our garden. As you can hear, there's a road over there, and there's some birds making a lot of noise up there. It's all pretty wild out here, mostly brambles, but you know what, absolutely full of insects and bees, and you can hear things crawling around on the ground. So, you know, still a really useful space. That's an elderberry tree, and it's a hawthorn, I think. But yeah, that concludes our tour. I hope you enjoyed the tour of my garden, and again, this is for donations for the Rainbows Hospice for children and young people, so please give what you can. I'll be doing a Q&A session shortly, so if you have any questions, just feel free to ask me. Thanks, bye!